Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you don't have to worry about making any judgments whatsoever because we do it all for you. Some people don't like being judgmental, but we love it. I've got Peter Bleksley here with us. I've got Steve and Alan. I've got Maddie Hale as well, of course, and Steve Denyer. Let's kick things straight away, Peter, with the man of the moment, the one and only Sir Keir Starmer.
Well, because life is so wonderful under this Labour government, that I now see everything through rose-tinted glasses.
Is that what you're wearing?
Is that what the surprise was?
Quite literally, so I bought some.
It suits you.
So this week, Downing Street turned on the lights of their Christmas tree.
Yes.
Number one, I don't know why they need such a big Christmas tree in Downing Street.
Yeah.
Because there's
Also,
a whopping great one.
most people put it inside the house. They put it outside.
Indeed.
So imagine if you did that.
But there's an enormous great one up at Trafalgar Square
There is,
anyway.
yeah.
So what's the need? You know, they could save a few bob there.
They could.
Maybe not have to nick, electricity money off of pensions.
Off of pensions. Yeah, imagine how much it costs to light up the Christmas tree. But shall we have a look at the very, very exciting moment when the Prime Minister counted down to lighting the tree?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, it worked.
It worked.
I mean,
What a countdown.
and then at the end of that, he also says, there was a couple of nervous moments there, but we're all good. Well, actually, you're not all good, right? But you did see the moment where he was so surprised that something worked. Nothing else works.
I've got to say it, the fella's not quite right, is he?
He's not.
I mean, clearly.
No.
And I've got a theory here.
Yeah, have you?
You know, remember when he was a rabid Corbynista?
Oh, yeah.
You know what, always...
When he was
Jeremy...
a good friend of Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah, and by his side in the shadow cabinet and all that malarkey.
Wanted him to be Prime Minister, in fact.
Yeah. Well, I think when he was one of Corbyn's mates, I think the Russians or the Chinese have implanted a tiny microscopic chip.
Yes.
And that they are actually controlling.
That would explain everything.
It would,
He's a sort of Manchurian candidate character.
Because nothing else can explain what a frigging oddball he is.
I know. What about Lady Starmer? She looked like she's been held hostage there, didn't she?
Yeah, she did.
She's standing there for all the world like, I don't want to be here. This is really embarrassing. And when he asked everybody to join in with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 countdown, nobody did.
And no one cheered after,
No.
which was the most awkward part. You just hope someone would have just said, yes!
They'd all gone home.
Well,
Well, everybody gone home. It took so long.
Well, somebody said on my show, thank goodness it doesn't work at NASA. You'd never get rockets off the ground, you know. But we got a sneak peek at them doing the rehearsal for it. Have a look at this.
3, 2, 1.
That's more like
I was actually confused. I was like, is there really a rehearsal for that?
There's a lot of AI stuff going around at the moment.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is also the week, let's not forget, that Sir Keir Starmer has admitted that what everybody else has known for some time, that the government isn't any good and it's not working very well, so he's going to reset it. Except it's not a reset. Don't call it a reset. But he's going to, instead of having missions, he's going to have pledges now. Or, no, sorry.
Milestones.
Milestones, right? He used to have pledges, then he had missions, and now he's got milestones.
Yeah.
It's all rubbish, isn't it?
No, that's cleared it up. That's really cleared it up, hasn't it?
Sorry, next it'll be gallstones, wouldn't it?
Gallstones, millstones around his neck.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is a disaster, isn't it?
Yeah. It's ridiculous. But to find out that he can't count backwards with any enthusiasm is the lowest of the low, isn't it? The way he's... 4. That is unbelievable.
I know.
How's he getting nervous about doing that? So you can't.
Also, I was talking to somebody about previous prime ministers, whether they would have done it, and you can imagine Boris doing it, and he'd be quite funny.
Yeah.
You can imagine other prime ministers, Gordon Brown, for example. They would have just got a child to do it or something. They wouldn't have got somebody who's so useless at communicating to do it. They would have, passed it on to a visiting school choir or something to do it, and that would have been fine. But for Starmer to do it, it looks so wooden.
In an empty
street.
little outside area.
Right.
Don't you think he just seems more and more awkward?
Yeah.
With himself. When he came in,
Yeah.
to see us at Virgin Radio the week before.
I remember that.
He won.
That
the
was when he
election.
said he didn't want to work after 6 o'clock on a Friday.
Exactly
That turned
that.
out to be rubbish as well.
But he was just kind of glazed over and almost kind of like saw right through us, like a robot.
He's like a rabbit in the headlights.
Just completely unprepared.
Yeah.
That's really awkward.
But it's not his fault. It's the chip inside of him that the Russians or the Chinese are controlling.
Well, I'll tell you what,
he has my absolute sympathy.
That's going to get reset.
Maddie may not get this particular reference, but I don't know if you had the Thunderbirds down in Australia. But when I did breakfast this week and we had this from the night before, I said, this has got to be done pure Thunderbird style. Have a look. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Also, of course, the other highlight of this week from the Labour government's point of view was they decided to outlaw junk food. So they're not going to allow anybody to advertise junk food any longer after 9 p.m. Yeah. Unfortunately, however, they haven't really defined what junk food is, right? So, unfortunately, they seem to have included porridge in the junk food, which, of course, is one of the healthiest things you can eat. They mean, that sort of crappy porridge that you buy, which has got loads of sugar and stuff in it. But actual porridge oats has now been included. So apparently, your child, your child under 16 can't see an advert for porridge.
The number of times you see kids on street corners doing the oats, it's a worry, isn't it?
It is a worry. Yeah.
Doing the oats.
It
That's
is.
what they call it, I believe.
The entire building.
Is it black market porridge?
porridge.
Well, we've managed to find an old-fashioned porridge ad for you. Here you go.
Well, here's a bowl of steaming Quaker oatmeal. And I can't think of a healthier way to start the day. Cost you 1 nickel and 4 pennies. So if you can't be bothered with nickels and pennies, throw them in a jar. Start an oatmeal fund. Quaker Oats. It's the right thing to do.
It was a simpler time, wasn't it?
It was, though. He is dead now, so maybe it was the oats that did it.
It might, maybe put something wrong into the oats.
This government should be dishing out more porridge, not less.
So, Steve Van Allen, over to you.
Liz Kendall, from the people who brought you such great hits as cutting the winter fuel payments for pensioners. Also managed to claim her fuel on the taxpayer.
Amazing.
Well, it was an expense. It wasn't like she actually burnt money that was due to payment to go to pensioners because she lives in a smokeless zone. Otherwise, I imagine she would have just heaped it up and set fire to it.
Well, she lives in 2 areas, doesn't she? Because this is for her second home, which I believe is in a constituency.
Yeah, well, they're allowed to claim fuel payments for their second home. But look at the optics. This is so obvious. See this coming down the track. If you're about to cut fuel payments for people, don't then claim, just have a whip round. Get it paid for. This is like Ed Miliband setting fire to trees and laughing in his back garden. This was always going to look bad. But the problem, she lives in a £4 million property. So if you can't afford
in Notting Hill,
can't afford your bills, sell it to raise the money. Then it's a farm, is what I'm saying.
But this is indicative of the way the Labour government operates, because as long as it's within the rules, they think it's all right.
Yeah.
But it isn't all right.
No, well, I mean, it's within the rules for any MP to claim this. It's also within the rules to not suggest cutting fuel allowance for people just over that pension credit limit. So there's an option. The problem is, though, Keir Starmer can't do anything about this. It's not like he can call her in for a meeting and say, Liz, we can't take freebies. He's being measured up for his free suits.
Well, this is, again, an example of Keir Starmer following the rules, because he said he thought he followed the rules by declaring that he'd had these suits. But except he didn't actually declare them until he was made to declare them. But now Liz Kendall doesn't need to change her behaviour because she thinks it's within the rules.
They asked him how many suits he claimed, and he said, 4. And they were there all day. It took him ages.
Yeah.
And I've got to confess, Lord Hale bought these roasting.
There you go.
Oh,
I
come
knew
on,
that you
Peter.
didn't buy them.
Well, don't forget to
Lord
declare them on the
AliExpress.
way out.
Yeah.
And we'll put them in the fund. But, I mean, Liz Kendall is married to a very wealthy man. I can't remember who he is. I think he's a lawyer, isn't he?
A financier.
Financier or
Whatever
something
that
like
is.
that. But the house is worth £4 million in Notting Hill, which is not bad.
Claimed £3 grand on electricity, which, to be fair, is the same as my bill, because I think I put the heat...
But some people have said she hasn't claimed actual amounts of money for the bill. She's actually claimed the allowance, which is not quite the same thing. So if you're allowed £3,000 and you can claim £3,000, she's just claimed £3,000. So, she's sort of limited it up so that... because people have said to me, well, if it's a second home and you're not in it very often because you live in London, basically, while you're working as a minister in the Department for Work and Pensions, how much electricity are you actually using?
She should open it up as like a warm bank for all the nearby pensioners.
Well, we've often said this, that if you can claim for your heating allowance, then what are we getting out of it? Should we be able to come and spend a night there, once a year or something?
Wouldn't it be cheaper if MPs lived within the constituencies that they represented?
Yes.
Cheaper and better,
yes,
I would suggest. I know some do, but clearly not all. And then when they came to London for parliamentary business, perhaps put them up in a hotel.
Well,
there are inexpensive...
Some of them do that. I've had many conversations about this going back about 15 years, and my favourite plan that I came up with was to put them on a ship in the Thames. basically. It'd be like the Bibby Stockholm. Be like the Bibby Stockholm. It's perfectly reasonable, you know. It would be kept clean. It could be like a, you know, single cell occupancy, if you like. You only need enough room for probably about 300 or 400 of them at any one time. Easy to do. And they can literally walk off the gangplank into the House of Commons.
Most MPs in Australia represent areas that they live in.
Absolutely right.
It just smacks of the old gravy train, snouts in a trough and all that, which we're forever giving good cause to moan about.
Absolutely, because as more and more of us get squeezed so that you don't have as much money as you used to have because you're having to pay more for your electricity, they don't worry about it because they just claim it back.
Yeah, we're all in this together. We're not, are we?
No.
Turns out some of us get to claim our expenses.
They're all in it together.
Yeah.
We're left outside going, what's going on in there? Maddie, over to you.
Well,
Jaguar still in the news.
Nominating Jaguar, obviously we know that they're going fully electric vehicle from now on.
Yeah.
And instead of, you know, creating a popular design that people would want to actually buy, and keep in mind these cars are £100,000 a pop, they've come up with this absolutely disgusting design. I think that anyone with any, you know, ounce of taste would understand.
There it is.
This is, I guess, the Barbie one. It's Miami pink.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, when they put it out, right, they had two cars. One was blue and one was pink. And given that they've done this huge woke campaign, which involved a video which had a bloke in a dress with a hammer and lots of sort of trans images, somebody said to me, isn't it disgraceful that they're suggesting a blue and a pink car as if there's only two genders? Well, I mean, that's a shocking state of affairs. Yeah.
Well, I've got something long and pink that gets my wife revved up.
Right.
There you go. There's my best Gregg Wallace impersonator.
I thought you were talking about a tie, actually, to be honest.
Peter, you've changed since you put on those shades.
He has changed, yeah. And also, they've been defending themselves, Jaguar, haven't they? Because they think that it's actually everybody else's fault. They want to be talked about. And they keep... I mean, marketing people are very smart, aren't they? They say, as long as we're being talked about... that's what they said at Bud Light.
In order if no one's going to buy it.
Yeah, but if everybody's saying it's absolute rubbish, that's not a good thing.
But Ratner's got talked about a lot for a while after Gerald Ratner called all this stuff crap.
Yeah.
Look, where are they?
And look, Bud Light lost something like 25 million off their share price because Dylan Mulvaney was jumping about, celebrating the dawn of Bud Light in a bath. But the car is an absolute abomination.
Yeah, do you really want to be driving around like that? But also, I was saying off air before that I was Googling Jaguar cars for the last, 20, 30 years, looking at the designs. I'm not a car person, they were stunning cars.
They really were. I mean, if you go back to the 80s, that was the model. Yeah. I still remember that model.
Well, the E-Type Jag was one of the most beautifully designed cars of all time. That was in the 60s, and everybody wanted one, and then they went all the way up through the Daimlers and Jaguar, sort of the XJ6, and all of those great cars. And what was even more ridiculous was Nigel Farage came out and said, Jaguar are finished. This is the first stage of them going bust. And the head of Jaguar's company actually said, well, we don't want people like Nigel Farage as a customer. Nigel Farage drives top-of-the-range Range Rover, which is made by Jaguar Land Rover, so he's actually one of their customers.
What a dumb thing to say.
I know. And the people who can afford to spend upwards of £150,000 on that ridiculousness of a car are not in their 20s.
I'll never understand why big corporations and big companies think it's a smart PR move to come out and try and disassociate themselves from people who are politically on a different side. This is about a car.
Yeah, just sell the cars.
Just grow up.
Well, when they did the first...
A customer.
Yeah, well, when they did the first... because they've been on for about... I think it's their third week in a row, Jaguar, because they launched the original advert, which was so ludicrous. It had no cars in it at all. Elon Musk actually wrote and tweeted Jaguar and said, are you actually selling cars anymore?
But now we know why they didn't put the cars in it. Look at the state of it.
But you know what? The Tesla, obviously an electric vehicle, the Tesla design, I love them.
Yeah.
I think that is a really cool car.
What about the Cybertruck?
No, absolutely not.
You don't fancy the Cybertruck?
I don't like that. That looks like a robot.
No, well, here's where they got their inspiration from at Jaguar. Have a look at this.
A souped-up engine is just the tip of the iceberg. The entire chassis is bullet and bomb-proof. Pretty handy when some diabolical villain is up to their dirty tricks.
Oh, yeah. I was about to say, that looks like...
So Thunderbirds gets two mentions this week, so there we are. But yeah, so we await to see the sale. Apparently they're not even going to go on sale with these cars for about a couple of years. It's
a good idea.
Yeah, they'll probably retract
Imagine James Bond driving something like that. Q would have to put a button in that you press and it makes it less embarrassing.
Yeah, it's like maybe bring back the invisibility car that they had in Pierce Brosnan version. Steve, over to you.
Can we just discuss Gregg Wallace?
Oh, do we have to?
We have to.
We already have,
to,
Steve.
guys.
Sorry.
I mean, this is...
He has been the story of the week, hasn't he?
I mean, unbelievable. I don't know about you guys. I've heard stuff about him. You know, I know makeup people who rarely have a go at stars, but Gregg has often come up in conversation as a kind of like a Sid James character, if you like. You know, somebody, maybe a dinosaur, somebody who doesn't say the right stuff. And of course, there's been this pile on this week and some really serious accusations, and Gregg released...
And they're getting more serious with every day that passes, aren't they?
Absolutely, and not just from MasterChef. You know, other programmes now and the production company have had to kind of deal with all of this, but possibly the worst bit of PR I've ever seen. Sunday morning at 6:20, he goes on Instagram and makes this post basically saying, you know, these women are middle-class women of a certain age. And as soon as I heard it, I just thought, you have now made this problem.
Somebody asked me if he was using the same PR firm as Prince Andrew. But let's have a look at it.
Now, in the newspaper, I can see the complaints coming from a handful of middle-class women of a certain age just from Celebrity MasterChef. This isn't right.
I thought he was going to address, you know, the coming out naked, covering his appendage, and the other rude comments, but none of that. I mean, it's the most kind of tone-deaf reply, probably since Prince Andrew, actually.
Probably, But then he then the following day, just to make matters worse, he then kind of apologised for it, right? And we've got that clip, I think.
I want to apologise for any offence that I caused with my post yesterday and any upset I may have caused to a lot of people.
And as you can see in that clip, you know, he hasn't really apologised at all. He's basically said that he's sorry for offending people, which is the classic, you know, I'm sorry if you took offence, but, you know, that's your fault.
Sorry, not sorry.
That's basically your fault, not my fault.
I think that car crash clip is a window into his soul.
Yeah.
I'll say no more than that.
I think the problem for Gregg Wallace is that the BBC probably should have stopped him from doing the things that he was doing a long time before. So I actually blame the BBC in all of this because, you know, there's lots of different opinions about, you know, whether this is just old-fashioned banter. I don't think it is. I think there's more to it than that. And there's certainly people complaining now that there was inappropriate touching. He denies all of it, we have to say that. You know, but the BBC knew this guy was a problem. Going all the way back to possibly 2009, 2010.
They're already trying to get their defence in the BBC by saying these shows were made by an independent production company that then deliver them to us. Trust me, when independent production companies are making shows for a channel, very senior people from that channel go and visit those shows on a pretty regular basis.
And are we actually all believing that there had been no complaints up until this week, last week?
Well, like, absolutely complaints, but
that's what I mean. It's like you can't, exactly. You can't play, you know, wool over your eyes.
No.
It's just happened now in 2024 where you're allowed to speak up. Absolutely not.
No. Also,
there would
I
have been
said
people
to somebody
complaining years
this
and
week
years ago.
on my show, you know, whatever view you've got of Gregg Wallace, you know, if somebody's running through your workplace naked with a sock over his, you know, Johnson, for want of a better word, you know, that's not normal behaviour.
No.
You know, nothing like that's ever happened here, and this is quite a modern company.
I've done it a few times, but the problem is I can use an ankle sock. So
there you go. So you're all right. Also, you work in comedy, so you can get away with it.
Yeah.
And,
this is why this story's been going on a bit. I think I've read too much about it because a handful of middle-class women of a certain age is my most common internet search.
Yeah.
So I'm getting these stories through an awful lot. And I think
that's good. I like that. But this is the other thing, is that the BBC now, as The Sun had a story this week, we're editing some of this stuff out. So they knew it was there, but before they broadcast, they were editing some of the things that he was doing out of the programme because they must have known that's not going to look great, so we'll take it out. And the BBC, for me, are more culpable than Gregg Wallace in a way.
Yeah. And I don't like his steak bakes anyway.
No,
so I'm boycotting it.
I'm glad that they actually showed this week's programme for the chefs.
Yeah.
Because it would have been a terrible shame for those really, you know, the potentially great people who are going to do so well to have their appearance canned after putting so much effort in.
Yeah, but they might be saying, why are we being shown with this guy? They might not want to be shown. I mean, they've now cancelled the Christmas specials, which they hadn't done at the beginning.
Have you seen the food they make? These chefs.
I've never watched any of it.
A long time ago.
I've actually never watched any of it.
I don't think I've ever watched it.
Cucumber shavings with a reindeer jus. What?
Well, this is why they made a mistake going after middle-class people. They're the only people who watch it.
Yeah.
Working-class people, we just have, like, chicken, whereas middle-class people is, like, locally sourced
bangers and mash,
chicken.
thank you.
Yeah.
I must say, I love a reindeer jus, though.
I've never even heard of that.
What about a coq au vin? Hey? That's another one.
You leave my van out of it.
Listen, we're going to come back with more. Me with another parliamentary mention, obviously another government minister or former government minister. More trouble with the Home Office. We'll be back with more from Plank of the Week afterwards. So you might remember there was a woman called Louise Haigh from the Department of Transport. She became the Secretary of State for Transport. And the first thing she did when she got in was apologise to P&O, who were, of course, the ferry company that she had slagged off because they'd said, and, you know, if she'd stuck to her guns, you might have agreed that she probably was right to slag them off, but they basically fired all their people and rehired them all. But because there was a problem with what she said, the Qatari company that owned them said, well, we're not going to do business with you anymore. We're just going to shut it all down and nobody's going to be able to work anymore. So that was the beginning. Then the next thing she did was she decided to hand a 15% pay rise to Usless to stop them from going on strike. And it turns out that Usless were actually not only backers of the Labour Party, but they'd also given her a bit of money in her election campaign briefings as well. And then they went on strike again the next day after they'd been given the pay rise. But she had to resign last week, you might remember, because basically it turns out that she's a convicted fraudster.
Great.
And you just kind of go,
another one.
What's the matter with these people? And apparently when she was working for an insurance company, she said that she had her phone stolen, except it wasn't.
Wow.
And the police actually prosecuted her. And I think we've got a clip of me breaking the news when she resigned. She lied, and she was convicted of fraud, and she's a Minister of the Crown. I find it extraordinary. She'll surely have to resign, won't she? Breaking news, she's just resigned. Are you serious? Louise Haigh has just resigned. She's obviously started listening to Morning Glory, and she's 10 minutes in, and she's gone, I can't take this. So Louise Haigh, so another one bites the dust. Isn't that incredible? So it's 12 minutes past 6. I say she has to resign. 17 minutes past 6, she's resigned. I wish it was that easy for the rest of them.
Are you taking requests?
I am, actually. You know, I'm a bit disappointed that we've got this far into the week and we haven't seen another one resigning. But the big news as well is that as a former member of the Cabinet, she's entitled to a redundancy payment when you lose your job. And she's only been in for, 5 weeks? And ridiculously, she's being offered £17,000.
I did the maths on that.
Yeah.
That equates to 56 winter fuel allowances.
That's very good.
You're going to look at how many phones she buy.
Yeah, that is very good.
He's got swagger about him today.
And some people are suggesting, and even some of them inside the Labour Party, Jess Phillips being one of them, she's a Home Office minister, says, I actually don't think that she should take the money. Because if you remember, back in the days when the Tory party were in absolute and utter chaos, and I think Grant Shapps did every job in the Cabinet at one point, from sort of 1-2 month period. When he was Home Secretary, then he was Foreign Secretary, then he was, Minister for the Crown of something or other else. And many of them took redundancy money when they left the job because they got fired and got made something. It's a ridiculous system. So she basically is equivalent. She's allowed to get a quarter of her annual pay as severance. And I just don't think she should take it.
No.
No, if you have to resign, you should get money for resigning. It very much seems like, I've done such a bad job, I can no longer do it. Where's my extra cash?
And also, the other problem with this story is that supposedly Keir Starmer knew that she had been done for fraud, and it wasn't considered to be a big deal because it was not a seriously, you didn't go to prison or anything like that, and it had happened a long time in the past. But so if that was the case, then why did she have to resign when it came out in the Times that actually she had been done and she did have a criminal record?
So it's OK as long as we can keep it a secret.
Yes.
That's exactly
the
what
minute
it is.
it gets out, boom, you're gone.
And these are the same people, by the way, sorry, Steve, I'll come back to you, who were calling for the resignation of everyone in the Tory party because they'd all been given an on-the-spot fine for having a party when they shouldn't.
After she resigned, I thought Starmer's statement, it was only, 5 lines or something, possibly the coldest kind of,
he is cold,
response I've ever seen about something.
It's the chip.
This actually does explain quite a lot.
It does.
It does. It really
But why
does.
would you pretend to have your work phone mugged?
She said, and it was one of those sort of backtracky type stories, because she claimed to, when she was asked by the Times what happened, she went, well, I had my bag stolen and I was mugged and it was a terrifying experience and I thought my phone was in the bag, but then later I discovered it was at home all the time. Now, apparently also there were suggestions that other phones had been taken in a similar manner from her. So as if, there was a very unusual propensity for people to steal her phone.
Yeah, and if
what's on there?
someone nicks your phone, you can claim on insurance. I suppose if you really know how the insurance system
if you
works.
know how
Where
the
did she
insurance
work
system
again?
works. She works in an insurance company.
Oh, wow, because I didn't even know that.
No.
Weird.
But the thing is that also, the reason that they knew that the phone wasn't stolen is because the phone got switched on.
Yeah.
And the picture that was given to the police of the phone that was stolen was actually taken after she reported it stolen. And so you can mark it on the, on the phone. You can know exactly when the picture was taken. The picture of
she knew exactly what she was doing.
The picture of the stolen phone was taken after she reported it stolen, which meant she knew that it hadn't been stolen.
Oh.
She was taking a picture of it,
And she was using it.
right.
and she was using
Okay,
it.
so
And
it's not an innocent
and it was
mistake.
also used to call a member of her family.
And that's the kind of mind.
Kind of banged her right. So I mean, I'm not a police officer, but you used to be one.
Yeah.
In fact, if you were investigating that, you'd be going, we think we've got this one, bang to rights, haven't we?
But when somebody commits such a stupid crime and they are so idiotic in their efforts to try and cover it up, you wouldn't really, surely, recommend them for a senior position in the government.
Let's go back to another department of the government, the Ministry of Justice.
Yes, and the Home Office. They need to get a bit of a cane in as well.
Well, he's going to
on
do
this
the caning
story.
in the Home Office, I think.
But-
But you can start it off if you like.
OK. So we get figures out of the Ministry of Justice this week. And by the way, there's a very, very sad and sombre twist that I'm going to bring to this story in just a minute. And it showed that 10,000 foreign prisoners released from our jails then go on to commit other offences. When foreigners are locked up in the UK, do you know what, government? Just deport them.
Yes.
Get rid of them. They have abused our hospitality. They have no right to remain on these shores. Get them on a plane and get them out.
Well, wasn't there a story earlier this week as well, or perhaps the end of last week, of the Manchester Arena bomber's mate, who was the guy who sort of radicalised him? He was released from prison, who had been serving some time on terrorism charges. He's a dual citizen with Libya and Britain, somehow. And he was the one that sort of started Abedi, the Manchester Arena bomber, on his journey to, becoming an Islamic jihadist, right? He could be deported to Libya, but apparently they're not going to deport him to Libya because he fears for his life if he goes back there.
Don't we have a problem with overcrowding jails?
Yeah,
here?
we do.
So why are you just releasing these people from the jails into the UK community?
Well, as I said before, Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, wants to release people out into the community because there isn't enough space for them in prison, and she doesn't think it does any good anyway.
Yeah, really.
I mean, great. Maybe she's not in the right job.
Look at
maybe
the
give her
reoffending
transport
rates.
or something.
Up,
These prisoners that are released, whether they're foreigners or whether they're UK prisoners, the reoffending rates are astronomical.
Yeah. So
it's
isn't that
ludicrous.
That's a problem with the rehabilitation kind of process that they're doing in prisons. Wouldn't you be pouring more money into making prisons a little bit better at rehabilitating the prisoners before they let out?
Because there is no rehabilitation.
Right.
Well, nothing like this.
And Keir Starmer's latest line is that, it's all very well saying build more prisons, but nobody wants them built anywhere near where they live. Well, so build them where people don't live then.
Yeah.
There's plenty of parts of Britain where nobody lives.
Exactly.
Middle of Wales, for example. It's full of sheep. There's nobody there. And if they want to escape, it will take them like 50 hours to reach any kind of civilization.
Well, build an Alcatraz.
Yeah. Well, we've got loads of islands off the coast
Yeah.
of Scotland, some of them uninhabited, which would be perfectly good for either the use of illegal migrants or prisoners. You wouldn't even have to build a prison.
Yeah.
So the Home Office.
Previously, Labour promised to sort out this migration problem, smash the gangs and get fewer hotel rooms being used by asylum seekers. Just a little update on that. The gangs seem to be rather unsmashed, 20,000 crossings and more hotel rooms being used. So what's the plan? Do you get the civil servants doing this to work harder?
Yeah.
How dare you brute? No.
Yes.
What you do is you give them a wellness room.
Yeah.
Because they need a room for their well-being because of how they feel. Apparently,
I didn't think they went into the office anymore. Why they needed a room
this is part of the
in
thing,
the building?
So they have this wellness room to sort out your stress and your anxiety.
Yeah.
They were going to launch it on a Monday and realised we shouldn't do that. No one's in the office on Mondays because they work from home. I thought that was for your mental health and anxiety.
Yeah.
How many fixes to this problem do you clearly need? So they've got this room, which there was an email that went around, described it. It's got kitchen facilities, and you can go in there if you need some time on your own. So they have a space that you can go into and it's got a border that you can close and prevent people going through that border. It's a concept the Home Office might want to work with a little bit, on a bigger scale.
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of people taking an interest in this story the other morning when I was on, and one person was my favourite who said, yeah, we used to have a room like that in my office. It was called the kitchen. And you would basically go there to make your coffee and tea, and you might run into a couple of other people, you might have a little chat, you might see what was going on, you might have a bit of a moan about the boss or something like that, and it was perfectly normal. Now you have to have a special room set aside so that you can go and sit somewhere and chill out.
It's a waste of a room, isn't it? Because with kitchen facilities and furniture, you could house someone there while they're waiting for asylum seeking claims to be processed. I've just got the numbers down.
When I was a detective, we had a Wellbeing room. It was called The Pub.
The Pub.
And I've got to tell you, spent a bit of time in there and everybody felt better.
Absolutely right. It is extraordinary, isn't it? But this is the thing. I mean, what about the poor people who are working down on the border who are getting no help at all?
I know.
Because they're being told... Because I don't blame the guys who are actually in Border Force. They're being told you've got to let the witches wave them in. You know, when they put their feet down on the sand or the pebbles at Dover, just bring them in, give them a blanket, you know, give them a mobile phone, put them on that bus there, and they'll be driven off to a hotel.
Yeah,
you know, unbelievable. I think we've got something for you here, though. This is from America, so it's bound to be quite weird. This is a definition of a safe space.
Can you tell us what a safe space is?
I mean, a place where you're not going to get hurt or ridiculed.
And so on a college campus, if there's people with like Halloween costumes that maybe make you feel uncomfortable, does that make it not safe anymore?
Yeah, that's not a safe place.
So it's violence, not safe at all to be just seeing those Halloween costumes?
Mm-hmm.
So Halloween costumes, definitely not safe.
Wow.
I'm terrified just by watching the clip.
I'm terrified of her. I mean, I tell you what, I wouldn't want to run into her in a dark night.
She would hate you.
You know, that's really not something I'm looking forward to. But anyway, listen, we've got more to do. This is Plank of the Week. Coming up, we're going to go across the United States of America. It won't be surprising to tell you. And Steve's got something about a naughty Santa, I think, which could be very interesting indeed. This is Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. It's now time for Maddie, Hale and Joe Biden.
OK, bear with me because I've got a lot to say on this one.
Yeah, go on.
I'm nominating Joe Biden, obviously, for pardoning his son Hunter Biden after, on multiple occasions, saying that he would never do that, and his press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, also saying that she would never do that.
Yes.
So we've got one incorrect, you could say lie.
Yeah.
The reason why I think this is a big deal is because it obviously goes against everything he said. He spent a 50-year career saying that he respects the court of law, respects the Justice Department, respects all the procedures put in place in government. The reason this is a big deal is because Hunter Biden didn't pay $1.4 million worth of taxes. Right. Now, that's a lot
Puts
of money.
most people in prison, that, doesn't it?
Yes. It is, I think, it could be 25 years in jail as the max. He would never have gotten that. On top of that, he goes to buy a gun when he's hopped up on drugs, and he said this, he admitted this in his own book.
Yeah.
In 2018, he goes to buy a gun and he ticks the box that says, I don't take drugs. Right. Now, there's not a lot to do, not a lot you can't do when you're buying a gun in America, but that's one of them. You just can't be a drug user. Right. So he lies again on that, and he is. So
it's a good system, though, isn't it? Are you a drug user? No. OK, here's a gun. Right? Yeah. You've got to love America, haven't you?
So Biden, he's facing one of them he's pled guilty to, one of them he's found guilty of. He's meant to be facing 2 sentencings this month. Yeah. Joe Biden, his daddy, comes out and says, I'm actually going to pardon my son because I feel like he's been unfairly treated because he is my son and he's had a track history with drugs and and he's overcome that. He's been 5.5 years sober. Now, I'm going to debunk this for you because this is absolutely ridiculous. He says it's unfair because there was a carefully negotiated plea deal agreed by the Department of Justice that unravelled in the courtroom last year. That's your Department of Justice. Yeah. So obviously you did a stupid little plea deal that would have gotten you off scot-free. The second one is he only basically got handed this because he was singled out because he's my son, and that is wrong. That is wrong. You didn't pay millions of dollars worth of taxes because, to quote by the special counsel, Hunter Biden spent millions of dollars on an extravagant lifestyle rather than paying his tax bills.
Yeah, well, we've all seen the footage from the laptop, haven't we?
Of course.
Where he's doing some quite dangerous-looking drugs.
And
hanging about with prostitutes.
If I had a son like that, I would happily let him go to jail.
Yeah. Exactly right. And, of course, let's have a look at the White House press secretary saying exactly what you've just described, Maddie, when she was asked. And she gets very sort of, tetchy when she's asked questions she doesn't like answering. Have a look.
Would the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear, and I said no.
Is there any possibility that the president would end up pardoning his son?
No. It's still a no.
It will always be a no.
It's still a no. It will be a no. It is a no, and I don't have anything else to add. Will he pardon his son? No.
Except that turns out to be wrong.
Yes.
In fact, it's yes.
And another reason why I just think this is just a ridiculous situation that has happened is because, so with the tax crimes, he hasn't paid an absorbent amount of tax, right? He then pays it back. So Joe Biden says the average person who pays back their taxes that hadn't paid them for various reasons doesn't get criminal time.
No. You don't just get to pay it back. And the other thing is that he's not just pardoned him for the crimes that he's been found guilty of, either by pleading guilty himself or by being found guilty. He's also basically admonished him for any other crime.
For a 10-year period.
That might come up between up to this moment. So if there's a crime that, say, he's discovered to have committed a year ago, he's already been pardoned for it.
Well, on that...
I think there probably are then, doesn't it?
No, but on that note, there is, right? So this case that was happening over his tax crimes doesn't include the tax years 2014 to 2015 when he didn't pay $145,000. And the investigation was so slow-walked because it had so many outside people getting involved that was left to expire.
Yeah.
Those years were left to expire. And basically when whistleblowers were at the House Oversight Committee, they were asked, oh, OK, so Hunter Biden could voluntarily pay $145,000 worth of taxes, but he has chosen not to. Correct.
Yeah. And this is the point. And so now, of course, all the people on Donald Trump's side are going, well, all these so-called lawsuits, he's going to get rid of those as well, which I'm sure they'll have to do. Steve, over to you and Dirty Santa.
OK, in a nutshell,
yeah,
Keir Starmer's cancelled Christmas, ladies and gentlemen.
He was just lighting up the Christmas tree.
It's a no.
Mind you, after what happened outside Downing Street with the lights and the tree, I think probably that's when he decided to cancel Christmas.
I first found out about this story on James Wales' show because this Santa, a guy called Paul Cleary, he's 70 years old.
Right.
He dresses up as Santa for a local charity in South Yorkshire. And apparently what he's done wrong is he posted a social media clip of Some Mothers Do Have 'Em with the number 10 Downing Street kind of spelling out idiots behind Keir Starmer. And, this local charity, many of them Labour voters have said, that's it, cancelled.
So they didn't like his views on Keir Starmer, so they sacked him?
Yeah.
Blimey. That's ridiculous. We've got a clip, I think, from James Wales' show. Have a look.
They've banned me from the lights turn on this evening.
Yeah.
And they've told me they don't want me service as a Santa anymore. And they don't want me donations because the food bank is sufficiently funded.
What a bunch
of miserable
lefties.
I do home visits, free of charge. Just ask for donations.
Down the chimney. Of course you do. No, let's not encourage home visits. Thank you very much indeed, Paul.
I mean,
why is he dressed like that?
I can't really
Santa
understand.
Oh,
it's not a great Santa beard, is it? I mean, I've seen better Santa beards.
Yeah,
I love that his lower third said right-wing Santa.
Yeah,
You've never seen the movie Bad Santa? Here's the current version. This is the follow-up. But
this is the problem now of the world that we live in is that you don't find out about quite a lot of these stories because they happen sort of in little local communities, and there's an awful lot of people who are frightened now to post things on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, because they don't know whether they're going to get cancelled by whoever it is that's around.
There's something very dark and macabre going on, and I'm sorry to bring such seriousness to the proceedings, but on that very note, people are holding themselves in check and not saying what they want to say because whilst this government hasn't introduced any new legislation curtailing freedom of speech, they fear that freedom of speech is being eroded.
And it is actually being eroded.
Pervasive.
Yeah, it is being eroded because once you get to a point where people are starting to self-censor because they're worried about what might happen, then you've already achieved, if you're the government, what you want to achieve. I mean, I don't know what it's
laws that are really vague, so you think, oh, I might be in trouble. It's rather, if you know the definitive line, you can go up to it. If it's this vague,
it is vague.
That's why we get to an election. We get to an election in the UK, in the US, and wherever, and the silent voters come through, and everyone goes, "Oh, how confusing! What do you mean?" Just because you haven't been surrounded by people, you know, plastering it on the internet or talking about it in real life, this is what happens.
Well, he was told, this guy Paul Cleary, that the reason that he got rid of basically was because most of the people in the group were Labour voters, and they weren't happy.
But he's missing a trick, though, isn't he? Because he's Santa put on a naughty list. Commute your own sentence. Pardon yourself. Learn from America. They literally pardon turkeys over there. So the hint was already there. Get
exactly right.
I mean, these are lawful comments. This is a guy of a certain age. Of course, some of us do have them. You know, you would only be a certain age.
Younger audiences won't know what that is, but it was a very funny and successful comedy show, wasn't it?
Ooh, it was. Betty.
Betty,
Never heard of it.
It's like he was in the room.
It was Michael Crawford's kind of first real proper emergence into the sunlight, wasn't it? Way before he did Phantom of the Opera, which is probably now what he's
very famous.
Classic,
what he's more famous for. But this is the thing. I mean, humour is what Britain does. It's basically what we're famous for. I mean, you're a comedian. Are you finding that people we saw, you know, we've seen it in the Edinburgh Fringe, though. We've seen, you know, shows getting cancelled because they didn't like what they were saying about the trans community.
And it's not the audience not liking it.
No.
It's the people in the venue, staff of the venue, then young people who've only just been employed, they work the bar or whatever, but if they complain upwards, then the venue's terrified, they just shut down a show.
Right.
I'm sure the pendulum must swing at some stage.
But are you finding that some comedians, I'm not asking if you are, but are some comedians being careful about some of the stuff they do as a result?
It probably always happens, but I bet it happens more now, because we used to just fear the audience, and that's the thing. And you should, because if you say something to the audience and they don't like it, your job was to make them laugh. You failed. But this extra, like, who else is listening? It used to be just the Daily Mail printing the words you say out of context. And of course, everything looks offensive if you're not in the room. But now it's this other thing of, like, you've...
But also, in the old days, it was all right to have a go at the Tories because they're evil and horrible. But now you can't have a go at Keir Starmer because he's a nice man and he's doing all the good things for the big
Keir
people.
Starling.
And for Keir Starling, for the good of the nation. And, you know...
thought about Tony Blair, but, you know, you start a couple of wars, the next thing you know, everyone can have a go.
Well, yeah, but nobody really... I mean, Tony Blair was the master at trying to tell everybody that he was doing the right thing. And sometimes hard decisions are not popular and all of that. But he didn't start doing that until he'd been in for a while. I mean, this guy started doing it on day one. You know, this is an unpopular decision. Yeah, you're right. Why are you doing it? Nobody wants it.
He's got a dossier on pensioners in his sex.
I know. Ugh. Absolutely ridiculous. Well, we've come to the end of yet another section, it seems to me. Coming up, one more from me, and then I'll have to decide. I may have to seek judgments from all of you as to who we give out. Because we've had, I think last week, we had Sadiq Khan. I think the week before we had Sir Keir Starmer. And I think the week before that we had David Lammy. I think the week before that we had Keir Starmer again. So it's starting to get a bit repetitive.
You'll never be Santa at this rate.
No, I don't think it'll be... It won't be the bad Santa, but we shall see. This is Plank of the Week. Back after this. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. We are in the final furlong where I decide exactly who's going to win it this week. But before that, my final nomination, and I'm afraid we've mentioned them in the past, the last few weeks, but we haven't actually put them in as a nomination, and it's The Guardian. Because you might know that in the past weeks, The Guardian have withdrawn from X, you know, because they think it's a bit toxic. And
they've gone on to Blue Sky.
I think they have gone on to Blue Sky, yeah. Where...
Can I... This makes me really...
Have you tried this
chuckle.
Blue Sky thing?
I've never even heard of it.
No? What makes me laugh is all these sanctimonious lefties, right, who told us all that we have to embrace mass immigration.
Yeah.
And if we don't, we're far-right racist thugs, right?
Bigots.
So all those condescending, sanctimonious lefties, they've now gone on to Blue Sky because they want a space where only like-minded people can live.
But you know what happened when Blue Sky got set up? In the first week or so, the system crashed because so many people were complaining about being offended by their own kind, right? Because they're such snowflakes that they couldn't handle anything, you know, and the servers all kind of went, you know, because we're getting so many complaints we can't handle it. But The Guardian, so they've already moved away from X, although they've kept an account there. I don't know why. but nobody was really reading The Guardian on X. So they've gone over to Blue Sky. But they've also been threatening to take strike action. Because,
we live in hope.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to the first day the paper doesn't come out. So far, that hasn't happened.
Would anybody notice?
Well, the BBC would notice, because the BBC buys about half the copies that they produce. You know, if it wasn't for the BBC, they wouldn't exist. But they also happen to own the Observer newspaper, right? Which used to be a separate entity, which was owned by various people over the years. The Observer's now kind of just the outrider for the 7-day week operation, except for the fact that the Guardian, who are supposed to look after each other, it's supposed to be a kind of workers' collective. It isn't. Right, because they basically just thrown all the Observer journalists under the bus and gone, oh, we're going to sell it to Tortoise, or Tortoise, if you want to call it that, which is a new organisation, loss-making organisation, run by James Harding, who used to be the former boss of the BBC News, right? So the staff at the Observer and the Guardian are saying, look, we don't want you to sell it because you've got no guarantees that they'll keep it afloat. We don't know whether it's going to go online. It's not going to actually be a paper anymore. Meanwhile, Jay Rayner, who's one of the famous kind of food critics of our time, not a favourite of mine, once blocked me on Twitter. I think I'm still blocked on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
But he said that inside of the Guardian and inside the Observer, he's Jewish, and he says there's been a real problem with anti-Semitism. People really, and he said it's been quite unpleasant, and certainly since October the 7th of last year, it's really got bad. So he's resigned from the paper altogether, refuses to work for them.
Well, then I hope they both go to the wall.
Well, exactly right. But it gets better, right? Because you know how lefties are in support of each other all the time. Well, they voted to go on strike, right? However, some of them have said that they'd quite like to go into work because they can't afford to go on strike.
Well,
and so they've been told that they can have anonymity. So when they go in to write stories for The Guardian, they can give them fake bylines or just not have a name on it at all. So all of this solidarity, brothers, has fallen by the wayside and gone right out the window. Basically, some employees fear that more ardent union members may snoop on the paper's internal systems in an effort to identify strikebreakers. Well, I'm sorry, if you work for The Guardian, why are you breaking the strike?
Yeah.
Isn't that against the rules of sort of socialism?
The left really don't have a sense of humour, do they?
They really don't.
Whether it's Santa Claus or newspapers.
Well, here's an email that was sent to staff, which was obtained by one of my contacts. Any monitoring of Guardian tools to see who is working on strike day would be viewed as intimidation and is not permitted. Sounds a bit Stalinist to me, that doesn't
it? Just.
You can have an anonymous byline should you choose to work and if you wish to cross the picket line. I presume if you want to cross the picket line anonymously, you have to wear a balaclava over your head so they can't see who you are. And then The Guardian, of course, who are fully in support of all sorts of strikes normally, are not in support of this one, funnily enough. And they say The Guardian plans to keep printing the newspaper and updating its website on strike days. It will publish a news article about the action online and in print, while a notice will also be explaining that union members are on strike and that some stories have been prepared in advance. What? So basically, it'll be crap, even more crap than usual.
But will it say the website is being updated by scabs?
That would be better. That would be better. And in other news, breaking news coming in on The Guardian, Dale Vince apparently wants to buy The Observer.
Do you know what? Every day that goes by and I don't hear his name, I give thanks to the Almighty.
Yeah. Well, he's put on his own
These
Twitter.
rose-tinted glasses are really working.
He goes, yeah, those rose-tinted glasses.
I'm going to give them back to Lord Alley. Right? They're rubbish.
The thing is, they only last for about 40 minutes, right? That's the thing. Keir Starmer had rose-tinted glasses when he got into Downing Street on July the 4th. By July the 5th, he was handed them back, going, these aren't working so well. But, you know, I'm finding it difficult, guys, to think beyond Keir Starmer and his tree.
It's Gregg week, isn't it?
I mean, it could be that he's the plank, but I think the BBC...
I think he is the plank.
But he's also the plank.
He made the choice.
The story started with 13 complaints, and somehow he thought, oh, no, I'll just upset all
there is that.
Yeah.
There is that.
They scare easily,
but then, of course, you run the risk of people taking more seriously his statement about middle-class women than actually what he did with the middle-class women.
Yeah. And he's probably done huge harm to South East London blokes who want a job on the telly.
He has, absolutely right. And people keep referring to him as a barrow boy, right? But he's been on the telly longer than he was ever working in a vegetable market, wasn't he? So you can't even say that. Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess to get away from Keir Starmer, why don't we give it to Gregg Wallace then?
Okay.
Can we do that?
Okay.
Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yeah.
I mean, not that you have to be in agreement with it, because I don't really care whether you agree with it or not. But, OK, so we're going to give it to Gregg Wallace then. Mr Gregg Wallace, in addition to all of the other things you've won, Plank of the week. I suppose it had to happen, didn't it?
Put a sock on it. Put a sock on it.
What an image. I want to forget that image forever and ever and ever.
Maybe we could do that in post, as they like to say. Peter Bleksley, thank you very much. Steve Allen, Maddie Hale, Stephen Denyer, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back. See you next time for more from Plank of the Week.